know the role of the tourism board. When I joined, I loved the idea of tourism, and I said to the mayor, that's a board I really would like to be on, because I thought that's interesting. That's always intrigued me. We have a lake cottage in northern Indiana, so in the summer I'm looking at all kinds of tourism and what's happening. Steuben County has 101 lakes, so I have a great interest in that. And so when I was put on the board, I just didn't know what the role was and what we were expected to do. We're not expected to go out and give people money to do things. We are expected to help groups that are doing things work together and get results from what they're doing. So that's when we started to have this conference 3 years ago. And we've just been so excited because the whole board got excited about it and are participating in it. And this has become a big event for us to do.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Oh, that's much better. That's much better. It's so exciting to welcome you all to Richmond, Indiana, to Wayne County. What we have discovered is there are 27 communities here from around 4 states. So we have people from Illinois, from Michigan, from Ohio, and from Indiana, and that's really exciting. Now here's what I want to know. Who has been here? This is our 3rd conference. Who has been here all 3 conferences? Oh, look at those hands. That is wonderful. Congratulations. Let's applaud those people. You know, the first year we did this, it was Connect for Success, because we wanted people to connect. We wanted you to know the other people that were doing tourism and that were bringing people to your community and to our community.
Getting people connected. For example, if I owned this particular flower shop or I owned this entity and I wasn't aware of the things coming into town to sell my wares or to demonstrate my wares or whatever, then we weren't having any kind of communication. We weren't hooked into one another. And so the connectivity piece was the first thing we went for. And it was really amazing because we had about 150 folks come to that conference, and before the end of the day, number one, they were making connections. Number two, they were setting goals of what they wanted to do.
Now this year, if you've noticed, is Activate for Success. We're asking you to get into action to do things.
This year we have 185, I think, people. I think last year we were closer to 150. So we're increasing the number of people.
And we're starting, and we started for some of you right away, because since we're in a performing arts center, we decided you needed to perform. So some of you have already been out in the terrace area, and when you were out there, you had a chance to do 2 things. Either put your handprints on that wonderful banner that's going to hang in our parking garage that Carvin Reinhardt has been working on. And then the second thing that you're having a chance to do is to look at to be part of the tiles that will go together to have some very big vases. And when you're with the tiles and when you look at those, a couple of people said to me they were a little intimidated by doing that. Oh, for gosh sakes, no. You're supposed to put something on the tile that is special for your community. And when we finish, what we're going to have are several big vases that say all kinds of wonderful things that are happening in communities. Then, one more thing I gotta tell you. There is a selfie. You all know what a selfie is, you know, when you take your own picture. I've learned that, what a selfie is. There's a selfie out in the terrace. At the end of the day, the person that has done the best selfie gets a $50 gift card. Okay, now we need to get to the action, and we need to make sure that you're activated, you're being involved in the community.
Thanks very much. I'm an Ohio guy, so it's always nice to come back to the Midwest. I was here in November, actually, last year, courtesy of Indiana University East as part of their author series. They bring in an author to come and talk to the community, talk to their students, and it was my privilege to speak to them and to Richmond about loving their city. And it's been interesting to see how much you guys have taken it to heart. emails and Facebook updates, and the invitation to come back. And we're actually doing a workshop tomorrow afternoon for the love of Richmond. Any of you who are in town tomorrow afternoon, it's at the Innovation Center. It'll actually be kind of fun there as well. So thank you very much. It's always nice to be welcomed back to a community as such. So I want to start today with a story. This story begins in Durham, North Carolina. It's March 2011, and there's a wedding in Durham, North Carolina. And like most weddings, there's brides and grooms, there's flowers, there's tuxedos, there's cake. Unlike most weddings, though, there are 1,600 brides and grooms, and they're not marrying each other. They're marrying the city of Durham. In what they describe as the largest civic union in history, these 1,600 people got up in front of their friends and neighbors, and they pledged their oath of love and fealty to the city. And the oath included things like a promise to keep the streets clean and safe, to support local arts and culture, to buy locally, protect the environment, vote responsibly. Very cool. And this is the kind of thing you'd expect that would come out of a chamber of commerce. No. Or maybe the city. No. Actually, this story begins with this one particular woman. And the story goes, this woman really loves Durham. And apparently someone once snarkily said to her, well, if you love him so much, why don't you marry him? I said, okay, good idea. And hence, Mary Durham was born. What Mary Durham really underscores is the fundamental fact that we are in a relationship with our places. Yet most of us don't necessarily think about it as a relationship. We have these highly examined personal and professional relationships. We spend lots of time grinding on those. When was the last time you stopped and thought about the relationship that you have with your place? Probably not too often, if ever. And like any unexamined relationship, it can go stale, it can go bad. So the first thing we have to do is recognize, A, we're in this relationship, and then B, we might start modeling our behavior a little bit differently. Because a relationship implies a two-way covenant. It's back and forth, So it can't just be about what the city is going to provide to you. It's got to be also what do we as citizens provide to the city there as well. Relationships, two-way streets.
Again, we talked about big content. Well, if all you're doing is sharing other people's content and not producing your own, and it's not of value like I talked about earlier, you're going to be just another voice amongst a lot of people who are sharing other people's content. What are you producing that has value for people? Okay? Your story could include events, interviews, behind the scenes. Anybody seen Mike Rowe's, jobs thing? Pretty popular. And what is he talking about? Behind the scenes. So what can you do that's behind the scenes? Step-by-steps, how-tos, and when all else fails, talk about bacon.
I think I've been a member of the organization for about 8 years. I was appointed by the mayor to the tourism board about 8 years ago, and I've really enjoyed it. It's lots of fun.
The important things was really to give back to the community, and so that's what I've done in little ways that I can. And I think it's neat. I think I've been here for 40 years, so it's home to me, and there's no place better.
Do you love your city?
Yes.
Good answer. Give that man a gift card. Yeah, you love your city. So you're sort of in the business of loving your city, and that's a good thing. And you'd like to believe that that's a commonly held notion. Maybe amongst the people that you do associate with, maybe that is the case. But the sad truth is, not enough of us love our places. So it is incumbent upon us, those of us who do love a place, we need to be the emotional standard bearers and carry that message out there to help get our fellow citizens to see and feel the city the way that we do. And remember this, emotions are contagious. You smile, I smile. You cry, I'll feel bad. When more people start saying they love their city, when more people start acting upon that, other people are going to feel it, other people are going to believe it.
One of the programs today is about this farm in northern Indiana that has turned itself into a major, major destination. And the topic of the program is we only had 2 cows, because where they moved from was they had 2 cows and they had a farm. And now they have a restaurant, they have people coming for tours, they have all kinds of things going on after starting with 2 cows. Jackie Carberry did the same at Warren Glow. She started making a few candles in her basement. And those of us that have been in Richmond a long time remember when we went to her the garden gate, which was a little house, and she had some interesting things and then she was making some candles in the kitchen. And today when you go to Warm Glow, you know, they have 7 or 8 buses that stop every week. And so we're teaching people that Richmond has wonderful things. You just have to begin to develop them and then tell people our story. So we're trying to tell people our story.
In my work, I was traveling around to a lot of different cities. I was working on creative industry development, creative economy development in a number of places. And the recurring theme was I kept meeting these amazing people who were just doing fantastic things for their places, and almost none of them were actually being paid for it. It was just this recurring sort of love, if you will. And I realized that that was kind of a secret sauce, if you will, that pretty much every place has those types of people. But it's sort of how we maybe go about being intentional about cultivating more of them, that I thought was a real opportunity for other cities to potentially learn from.
So as we talk about this question, what do you love and what do you hate about your places? I ask this question a lot when I travel, because I'm always curious to hear what people have to say. And you know, if you travel a lot, you'd expect to hear a wide variety of responses, and I typically do. But as I've traveled, I've also gotten to come to the realization that there's an almost comic uniformity around certain answers that people all over the world give. And I'm talking cross borders, cross nations, cross cultures. People are consistent about the things that they say they dislike, the things that they say they hate about their places. Kind of interesting, okay? So what do we hate about our places? Well, traffic, parking, bad education systems, bad planning, ugly design. Big problems we spend tons of money trying to fix, and I'm not sure you ever truly fix them. At best, you're addressing the symptoms of those problems. And for most communities, I think nothing actually represents us more than the pothole. Nobody likes potholes, right? And we as citizens, we complain to our city about the potholes. The city eventually gets around to fixing the potholes. And for most citizens, this is their level of engagement with their cities. I can tell you this, we can fix every pothole in Indiana, we can fix every pothole in Ohio, where else we have? Michigan and Illinois. We can fix every pothole in all of these states, and we, the collective citizens of the Midwest, would rise up and say, thanks, roads don't suck quite so bad. No love for fixing potholes. There is no emotional return on investment for fixing potholes. This is not to say we stop fixing the potholes, but I think that we as citizens need to agree that maybe we aspire to something more. And here's the tricky part. We as leaders in a community, we need to actually recognize that our citizens know to ask for the city to fix the potholes. That is an obvious pain point. There's a hole in the road, my car's going to fall into it, somebody needs to fix the pothole. Great. What our citizens don't necessarily know how to ask for, or they don't necessarily think about asking for, are things like art and beauty and great design. Those are things that are not necessarily in the lexicon of most of our citizens. So we as leaders in a place, we need to get out in front of that and realize that it has got to be about more than what they're obviously asking for.
A lot of people always thought, Richmond, who would come to Richmond or who would come to Wayne County for a tourist thing? And then in our first conference, what we kept saying is, look at all the things we have going for us. People that come here to look at or study the community or do research on it say, oh my gosh, you've got in your historic homes, you've got in your environment and your concern about environment, you've got in the depot area, and you've got a viable downtown, you have a department store downtown. No one has a department store downtown. Richmond still has one. So we had to first of all convince people that this was a good place and that there were things and if they connected together.
So legacy projects are things, they can be big, they can be small, they have to be open, they have to be accessible, they have to be something you're not asking us to fund because I don't have a budget. They have to be inclusive, they have to create a legacy in some way. They can celebrate. We have 4 themes in the bicentennial, and these will all make sense. Youth and education is our biggest because that's our legacy, right? Nature conservation, because we have those projects. Historic celebration and community involvement. We'll probably be adding one next week on something about in the space of health and wellness and children. There will be something there. We have a resolution that we hope that we're asking people just to remember the children for next year. And there's some huge projects. Rotary International, Gleaners Food Bank are doing huge projects. Kiwanis next year around children. So they just need to be in that space. There's it's a 5-minute application process.
You know, let's make it functional, let's make it safe. We paint it battleship gray, kick it out the door, and that's good enough for right now. No, I don't think so. I don't think even the most fiscally conservative tax hawks amongst us want to live in a really functional, safe, and battleship-grade community. Okay, so what could we aspire to in our places? What should we aspire to in our places? Well, how about comfort? Why can't the city be comfortable? How about conviviality, in the sense that our city actually helps facilitate bringing us together and connecting us with our fellow citizens? Why isn't our city interesting? And maybe more appropriately, why isn't our city fun? Where's the fun is a perfectly legitimate question that we should be asking a whole heck of a lot more in the context of better city making. Now, I'm sure all of us have been involved in some of those awful meetings, you know, when we're down there with our team wrestling with some big hairy problem down there in the weeds, right? Those meetings suck, no two ways about it. But maybe the next time you find yourself in that meeting, it'd be interesting if you raised your hand and says, okay, I see what we're doing here, but I have to ask, where's the fun? Because when you ask that question, you change the dynamic in the room and the way people are thinking about the problem. You ask, where's the fun? Someone might actually look up from their computer and they might smile. They might look to the horizon and go, yeah, where is the fun? And in that moment, you've opened up the door to the possibility of something beyond a merely technically sufficient solution. Where's the fun? Great question to ask. Now think about this. We've all been involved with all kinds of projects that have all kinds of requirements and specifications, right? When was the last time you ever saw fun as a stated, articulated goal of any project we've ever worked on? Never. Even a project which by its very nature should be fun, like let's say a park or a playground. No. All kinds of environmental, structural, insurance, all those kinds of requirements. But no, not one mentioned the word fun. Why not? Why not put that out there? If not as a goal, at least as an aspiration for that project. And it may be somebody who's a little closer to delivering that solution that might go, management wants it to be fun. How about if I try this? I don't know what this is today. You don't have to know what this is today. But maybe somebody who's a little closer to delivering that solution, they might have a pretty good idea of what this could be in the context of that particular project. If we at least plant the seed and get them thinking about that. I think that's a very worthy goal and a very good question that we should continually ask, where's the fun? Because again, it does change the way we fundamentally think about the problem.
The workshop that we're going to do, the For the Love of Richmond workshop, the whole idea behind it is to show people that small, inexpensive things can have big impacts. And the small things can actually be fun and weird and maybe even a little crazy and wildly creative there. And folks just think that, city building, it's all about big, important, serious stuff. Okay, yeah, there is that. But community building can actually, and probably needs to be fun as well, especially if we want to get people to come back and do it again. We'd best figure out a way to make it fun and interesting. And believe it or not, those little things, those little $500 sort of budget, projects that we're going to talk about, people don't think, well, what could you do with that? It's like, well, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of creative constraint around that. We get a little smarter. We certainly get more creative in our thinking when we do have those sort of constraints, as opposed to like, well, complete blue sky, blank canvas. No. Tell me that the canvas is this big and I have 2 colors and I have 15 minutes to work on it. Okay, go. And that's really what we're trying to get people to do, is to start something small that they can do next weekend, as opposed to waiting till next year and they see some results. And by seeing those results, they go, wow, look what we did. And maybe they get some encouragement from that to go on and then do the next thing.
In the spring, several of us as volunteers do a leadership program. We do 4 evenings. This year we started with Peter's book, Love Where You Live. And we gave each one a copy and said, read about it. And Peter says there, it's the low-hanging fruit that you do. So we said to them the first night, you're all going to do some kind of a project, and you're going to do something that will, in 4 or 5 weeks, be of benefit and fun for the community.
So these love notes, these small things with big impacts, sometimes are the things that cities will give to their citizens. And if cities are very lucky, citizens might actually give back to their cities as well. And I have a few examples of these love notes. Have any of you been back to New York City and visited Times Square in the last 4 or 5 years since it became a pedestrian-only zone? An amazing transformation of that space. In the past, when you went to Times Square, the one thing you wanted to do was stop and look around. But you really couldn't do that the way Times Square was previously designed. Because if you stop on the curb, you're gonna, on the sidewalk, you're gonna get run over by a New Yorker. You took one step off the curb, you're gonna get run over by a cat, right? Take your pick. So a few years ago, they brought in, they pushed the cars to the periphery, they brought in seating, they brought in Wi-Fi, and they turned Times Square into the ultimate place to people watch. Fantastic, sensory overload. And what's interesting is the guy who runs the Times Square Business Alliance told me something fascinating. He said in the last few years, locals have started to come back to Times Square. In the past, a local New Yorker would not have been caught dead in Times Square, because that's where all you tourists were, right? Blocking traffic, taking pictures and whatnot. But no, now because there's seating and Wi-Fi, ultimate place to people watch, and by the way, an amazing performance venue now as well, locals have started to come back to Times Square. In the grand scheme of New York City, Times Square is a small thing, but I guarantee you it will have a very big outsized impact on the way you see and feel about New York City as a whole. Small thing, outsized impact.
Well, I mean, you just have to put yourself as a traveler. If you've gone somewhere and you stayed overnight, what is it you like to do? And, you know, whether it's shopping or whether it's sightseeing or the museums or the culture or a cultural event, in all of that, you're going to, number one, you're going to stay somewhere. Number two, you're probably going to eat out somewhere. And maybe you forgot that extra pair of underwear that you needed, so you're going to go shopping. All that ties together.
When I talk to cities, leadership generally is very accepting and positive about what I would say, because I'm talking about love. I mean, who can decry love there? Now, I know that maybe some of what I talk about might, in implementation, might be a little more challenging for folks. How we say yes to more people, how we say yes to more projects, especially some of these things that I'm talking about that maybe don't fit neatly into any particular category, or it's like, hey, we've never done that before. It might make folks a little bit nervous. And what I try to do is let leaders know, you know what, it's okay. And in fact, that by letting a little of that go, you actually open up the door to so much more potential good than whatever risk your city manager or your city attorney might actually be, whispering in your ear there. Because too often I think we live in a little bit of fear of experiments and trying different things, and consequently our leadership tends to get very comfortable with incremental improvement. And I'm fine with incremental improvement, but occasionally I think we need to swing for the fences, especially if we do it in maybe a smart way as well. I'm not saying willy-nilly random kind of stuff, but pick your spots and take a chance.
People that are desperately, passionately in love with their places. In my book, I call these folks co-creators, because they're essentially co-creating the experience of making the city with many of you. You guys would probably fall into what I would call the official co-creators. It's sort of your job to make the content of the city, along with like city managers, planners, architects, city council, folks like that. But then these other folks, the ones who aren't paid to do this kind of stuff, this is just sort of how their sense of creativity, how their sense of community manifests in some really remarkable ways. Like my friend Bob Devin Jones here. Bob is the creative director of a small black box theater in downtown St. Petersburg, where I live. And for those of us who live in St. Pete, we know how important Bob is to making St. Pete a great place to live, work, and play. But he's not going to show up on any sort of city org chart or most powerful, most influential business person or anything like that. No. But again, those of us who live there, we know. And all of you probably know your community's versions of Bob Devin Jones. Some of you probably are your community's versions of Bob Devin Jones. And as much as we love what Bob does, because he's our friend and we see him all the time, there's still this notion of, that's just Bob being Bob. No, I gotta tell you, Bob being Bob is extraordinary, and we need to find more of that. Because Bob doesn't see the problem the same way that we the official folks do. And consequently, his solution to the problem is going to be very different than the solutions we might officially come up with as well. And we need that energy, we need that excitement, we need that kind of thinking and that kind of creativity to mix with the good big stuff. We get the big stuff mostly right. Where we have the real opportunity is to match it up with some really wonderful, ground-up, individual sort of stuff from the bottom. And then you get this really interesting, confluence of stuff, good stuff happening from the top down, interesting stuff happening from the bottom up, and then things get really, really interesting in places.
The co-creators are the people who aren't paid to make your place better, but that's just how they roll. It's how their sense of creativity, how their sense of community manifests there. And cities would do well to try to work with them. And one of the things I suggest to communities is like, look, you know who the obvious co-creators are. Pick half a dozen of those folks. Every community has them, every mayor, every city council person, they know who those people are. Start with them. Bring them together, ask them for their help. Ask them to help you achieve something within the city. And really the best thing about these kinds of folks is you as a leader, you don't have to get them started on anything. They're already doing this stuff. Really what you're trying to do is maybe hitch your wagon to their star and allow you to maybe channel some of what the city is already doing with something that's already happening, maybe at the grassroots level. And then you have a real opportunity, I think, to partner and to have that 1 + 1 = 3, kind of moment there. And then from there, what you do is maybe you expand the circle, because those co-creators are probably going to know a few other of those co-creators, and maybe, 1 or 2 levels down that maybe the mayor doesn't actually know, that the mayor should know. And then I think collectively, you talk about the people who are maybe a little disengaged with their community. You start with the people who care passionately about the place, both the elected and the official folks and the unofficial folks, these co-creators. And then you just, you work, you do the stuff. And by doing it, you show people that there is something interesting happening in our city, that there is wonderful things here, there's good people, there's fun, and then you might start changing some of those hearts and minds that way. Yeah, I've met some really interesting people here. People who, even after, who when I was here the first time, they were so anxious to come up and share with me the work that they were doing. And then they've stayed in contact with me, ever since. And they keep sending me interesting stuff. And folks who, were, really integral into bringing me back. I mean, the workshop tomorrow, I have to credit, Susan Isaacs from the Innovation Center and the local growth program that she's been doing here. She was the one who reached out and said, hey, can we make this happen? And and so folks like that who continue to love this city, who continue to make a difference, I'm always impressed, by people like that. I'm a Midwestern guy, so I like coming back. I'm from Ohio. I'm from Ohio, so I like coming back to cities, like this. It feels familiar and comfortable.